Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to show you how to find area of a triangle using cross product. The example is find the area of the triangle with given vertices P, Q, R. What you need to know to be able to solve questions like this is the geometric interpretation of a cross product. So if you have two vectors, u and v, you can use them and define a triangle. So this triangle is the triangle these two vectors define. Then the area of this triangle is going to be, you have to do these three steps. One, cross product u and v. So u cross v. When you cross product two vectors in R3, you get another vector in R3. Then you can find its length. That's the second step. But you're not done. You have to multiply this by half or divide it by 2, and that will give you the area of this triangle. Here, the trick that we need to know is that the question doesn't give us vectors u and v. Instead of that, it gives us 3 points. Let's say P, Q, R. And then question is find the area of triangle. So then the first step for this kind of questions is that I have to cook up two vectors out of these 3 points and then use them in this formula. Okay? So I have to cook up two vectors out of these 3 points and use them in this formula and get the area. But what are those vectors? The vectors here you can get by doing, so let me write it here. So u in this case is, this is what I like to denote, PQ, meaning that you subtract P from Q and you get a point. So a vector. Q is 1, 0, 2 minus 0, negative 1, 2, which gives me 1 minus 0 is 1. 0 minus negative 1 is 1. And 2 minus 2 is 0. That's my vector u. What about v? V is the vector in the same direction as going from P to R, and it has exactly same length. And how do we find that? The only thing we need to do is subtract P from R. In this case, R is 1, 0, 3 minus 0, negative 1, 2. And then I have 1 minus 0 is 1. 0 minus negative 1 is 1. And 3 minus 2 is 1. Well, now I have two vectors here, u and v. And what I need to do is cross product those two vectors and get a new vector and then find its length and divide by 2. So then the next step is, this is step 1. Step 2 is find u cross v. So to find u cross v, I have to find the components, yes? First, what is the first component, what is the second component, what is the third component? And I'm going to use the formula that we have in the book. So To do that, so I need to cover the first components of u and v and put the remaining of u in the first row, remaining of v in the second row of a 2 by 2 matrix and find determinant. For second component, you cover second components of u and v, put the remaining of u in the first component. If I covered this, the remaining would be 1, 0. And the remaining of v in the second row of a 2 by 2 matrix. Find determinant. In the middle component, you have to multiply the determinant by a negative 1. And then for the third one, cover these, put remaining of u in the first row, remaining of v in the second row, find the determinant of this 2 by 2 matrix. And when I write determinant of 2 by 2 matrix, so if I have A, B, C, D, I mean multiply entries on the diagonal, A times D, minus multiply the entries on off diagonal, BC. Well, let's try to do this thing here. So determinant of 1, 0, 1, 1. Diagonals are 1, 1. So 1 times 1 is 1, minus 0 times 1, which is 0. That's the first component. The second component, I have to put a negative sign out. 1, diagonals are 1 and 1. 1 times 1 is 1, minus 0 times 1 is 0. That's the second component. The third component is diagonals. 1 times 1 is 1, minus off diagonals are also 1 and 1, so you get 1. Then the cross product is here. It's this vector. 1 minus 0 is 1. 1 minus 0 is 1. There's a negative sign outside, so I get negative 1. And 1 minus 1 is 0. That's step 2. I found u cross v. What about last step? Step 3, use the formula. Find the length of u cross v and divide it by 2. So I have to find u cross v and then divide it by 2. What is u cross v? I have it there, 1, negative 1, 0, and I want to find its length. We know that length of a vector is find sum of squares of components of that vector and find the square root of that number. So I'll keep this half out, then multiply it square of the first component squared, second component, which is negative 1 squared, plus third squared. Well, this is good. Now I have half of 1 squared is 1, plus negative 1 squared is 1, plus 0. And then here, 1 plus 1 plus 0 is root 2, multiplied by half. I can write it root 2 over 2. Well, that's it. I found two vectors u and v. Then I crossed them. I got this new vector. I found the length of that vector just by squaring the components, adding them, and finding a square root of that number, and then divide it by 2. And this is the area of that triangle. Again, the only thing you need to know is this formula for questions like this. Okay, that was it. Thanks.